Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your testimony. This is quite a problem, and certainly in East Texas, where I'm from, we've experienced the problem. We've seen rivers and creeks flood, and then immediately here come all the federal bureaucrats say, whoa, this is wetlands now. You can't do anything. And have any of you guys had property that flooded and you were told it's now wetlands and you can't use it for anything? None of you have any wetlands on your property?
Probably examples of that, Congressman, but I don't, the farmers that I deal with, but I would have to.
Well, didn't one of you say you had some wetlands on one of your property? Yes, sir. Mr. Cruz?
I have prior converted cropland that, in other words, as you know, land that I farm that is just great farmland, but at one time, I live in the very southeast part of Missouri, the Boot Heel they call it, and at one time it was all swampland. And it was cleared and drained, and now it's the start of the Mississippi River Delta, so it's great farmland, as Congressman Graves said. But part of my farm in different areas of several fields is identified as prior converted. You'd never know it walking over it, but one of the concerns that not only I, but so many landowners have is what may happen if we change the Clean Water Act, because it's been very clearly codified that prior converted is not under the jurisdiction of the Clean Water Act, and there's a real concern about what might happen if we change that.
Right. Do none of you know people that have had water end up standing either by a beaver dam that was later had federal officials come in and say, that's now something we'll regulate, you can't use it? Surely y'all know of people that have had that happen, correct? I'm getting some nodding heads.
I know of a company that had a major manufacturing facility, and their cooling system, their air conditioning system, was such that it, as all systems, accumulates water.
Sure.
They piped the water, instead of putting it in the sewer, piped the water out into adjacent property. And then the Fish and Wildlife and I think the Corps of Engineers came along and said, after 4 or 5 years, oh, you've got a wetland, and then wouldn't let them build on an addition to the factory that would have created jobs and wealth.
Well, thank you, and that's exactly where I'm going. We've talked about shovel-ready projects, but if we eliminate the word navigable, then some of these shovel-ready projects that were going to provide jobs, which puts food on the table and puts taxes in the coffers so we in Washington can squander it like we have been lately, all that comes to a stop because navigable has been put in legislation that starts creating permits that weren't previously there. And so that's something that hits me. And as an aside, after Hurricane Katrina, and based on the experience we've had in East Texas with rivers flooding and all the federal officials saying you can't use it anymore, I kept wondering when one of those federal officials is going to run into New Orleans and say, whoa, this is all wetlands, nobody can touch it, and see these high-rise hotels, we may lease those out as multi-level duck blinds next year, but nobody ever did that, and it just seemed to be a real conflict in the way people were treated. But Mr. Pebley, I was curious, as I understand you were proposing the rulemaking process to clarify the federal limits over waters rather than legislation. When it comes to legislation, you can vote me out if you don't, constituents can, if they don't like what we put in legislation. But on the rulemaking, you can't really touch the federal rulemaking bureaucrats. Why would you prefer rulemaking over just fixing it right the first time in legislation?
where I come from on that is we know what we have right now. We know what the current law is. We know where the pitfalls are in that law. And with Congress overseeing and working with the EPA and the Corps to establish good administrative rulemaking through input by ourselves and other.
Is that an oxymoron, good administrative rulemaking? It just sounds like there's a conflict there. But well, I understand your position, and my time's run out, but I have real concerns when we don't make it clear in legislation and leave it to bureaucrats you can't touch when they screw up. Thank you. I yield back.